Like Galt is the head training school. It's the biggie. All the new girls go there, and then they got a psychiatrist, and they analyze you. And then from these tests they make and everything, they can decide which of the 3 training schools you go to, And so, the man who sits there and calls your name out came with his wife and his car. They drove me to Galt. They were very nice people. I was crying, and they took me to a restaurant in Galt, but they never let me alone, They thought I was going to escape and all that stuff, It hadn't dawned on me for a while there. But they were telling me how good I was and everything, how cooperative I was. Christ, how could I be cooperative? I was too busy crying. And so they drove me to Galt, and I went into this little room. And then in this little room, this lady, I had a purse with me, I think. She went through it, dumped everything out, and put everything, the purse and the makeup and the money and everything, in this big envelope. And I never saw it again. I got the money back, but they had lost my purse on me. And then the next thing I had to do was I take off all my clothes, and they checked all my clothes. I get in this house coat. Then you have to go to the nurse's office, And she's got this lice shampoo, and she washes your hair in case you got lice. I didn't have lice or anything. You have to take this bath, with special stuff in case you got scabies or something like that. Little bugs that get under your skin and your arms, stuff like that. Like, when you go in there, they automatically thought you had bugs. I don't know why. And then once you had your hair washed and all that stuff, you had to lay down on this table, and she got this greasy stuff, and she put it all on your crotch, No, I don't know. You're supposed to kill crabs. That was the crab bits, And then they check your toenails and everything. They just, they hunted you really good looking for bugs. They really humiliated you. Really made you feel low, And then doctor comes, He checked your hair again, and he checked your whole body, and you get an internal and all this rot. He starts asking you questions and everything. He asked if I was a virgin and all this crap. I didn't ask because I didn't feel it was any of his business. Then you had to get dressed, and then you went back into the rec room with all the other girls, Like, these were just girls who had been just directly from courts. You spend 2 or 3 weeks in Galt, and that's when you go to the psychiatrist. You have to have 5 interviews. Anyways, like, when you get in there, everybody has one thing in common, and that thing in common makes everybody your friend, So somebody new, you just naturally go up to this girl and make her feel at home because you know what she's going through. You know she's scared and everything like that. The school gives you these rag skirts and rag tops and socks and so many pairs of underpants, so many pairs of these really, really, really toughy bras, and all that stuff. And you get so many things, so many bobby pins and stuff. And a girl will sit there and trade stuff, For, like, the more Noxemas you have, the more Noxema bottles, the higher you are in status. I had about 11 Noxema bottles, so I was high in status. And you sit there and trade stuff. And if one girl, say, had something that you wanted, you'd rip it off her, It was just crazy. Everybody was friends, but everybody was stealing from each other for higher seniority and crap like this, It's really funny. Like, on the outside, everybody has things, like, this is mine, and that's yours. But here, everything, like, it was all the same, And so people would want different things. Like, say, like these rag skirts, they were all the same. So people would color them in to make them look different, And your shoes, everybody had the same old shoes. So some people would sit there and sew little things on or glue little things. You do things to be different because you didn't want to look like everybody else and be like everybody else. They tried to make these, they tried to mold you the way they want you. You didn't want to, so you tried anything to be different. They teach you there that you are bad, that society doesn't want people like you, that you're no good, and you're never going to amount to anything. They tell you about Vanier and about Kingston's own penitentiary and everything, and they say, well, this is going to happen to you and stuff. They say, once you start out as a criminal and go to training school, you're automatically going to end up in a penitentiary, and you're going on and on. So it makes you look at yourself like a piece of rot, They do that. They make you feel rotten and bad. And they try and get you to admit that you're no good, Like, say that a girl who had turned 18 and was terminated and all that, say she got sent to Vanier. The teachers automatically talk about it to the class. They say, oh, well, some of you returnees might remember Lori, blah, blah, blah. Well, she was held up a bank a while ago, and now she's in Vanier. And then they'll say something like, it seems that all girls who are in training schools, they always seem to end up living the same old criminal life. And they always go on and on. They remember one teacher said, once a criminal, always a criminal. And another teacher says, I don't know why we bother teaching you girls to be ladies, because all you're going to do when you get out of here is just go back to your ways, you know. Another teacher says, most of the girls that come out of here just return because girls your age just don't learn anything. He says, it has to be beaten and beaten and beaten into you. Hippies, that's what he called us all the time. Hippies today, they just want to do what they want to do, and look what happens to them. You know, he's going on and on and on like this, you know. Teachers, they really put you down. Like some of the girls had syphilis there, and they're always saying, oh, if you get out, we might have an epidemic. They're always talking to these girls like they're little whores or something like that. They're always talking like this, and it really made those poor kids feel rotten, you know. My youth in the law teacher, she had this book written by Judge Knight or McKnight from Ottawa, and most of the girls there were from Ottawa, and he was their judge, you know. And this book just told about the problems the cops had and everything like that. And it was always talking about the constables, you know, and how teenagers should have more respect for constables. And going on and on. And they start telling the rules, you know, that juveniles need not worry about being sent to jail because they cannot be sent to jail unless they are 16. And she read that out. Immediately, about half the class hands go up. Oh, I spent a week in jail, you know. I spent a night in jail, you know. Oh, this copper threatened to throw me in jail a couple of times, you know. It says you cannot be arrested unless you're 16. More hands go up. Oh, I was arrested, you know. This cop came up and says to me, you're under arrest, you know. And she says, I don't want to hear personal experiences. She says, training school girls lie. And we're all sitting there, no, man, I can prove it, you know. She says, this judge knows what he's talking about. He wrote a book on it. He says, when one of you girls write a book on it, your experiences, then maybe, perhaps, I will considering what you're saying, you know. He's just going on and on like this, you know. She didn't want to hear our personal experience. She didn't give a damn about us. She just wanted to tell what was in the book, written by a judge who had sent half those girls up there. Oh, she was a fool. There's one teacher, beauty culture. And what you do is she sits there and analyzes your face, you know. And then you have to do all these facials to get all of the germs off your face and all this stuff. And then she gets all these kind of makeup foundations and blushes, and she plucks your eyebrows. And she plasters this makeup on you. One girl had very greasy hair. This kid washed her hair every night because it was so greasy and short, so the grease had reached the end short. And she sat there and wash and wash and wash. And finally she just said one day, I'm no good. My hair is greasy. Everybody's not going to look at me. My boss won't like me. I have greasy hair. And I just sat there and looked at this kid, you know. She was strange. And there's a couple of the pregnant ones. They'd get themselves all beautiful up. It was a mask, you know. You know, like you could tell when somebody was feeling really rotten. The more makeup they wore, the more rotten they were feeling, you know. It was really funny. This new girl came in. And she was a couple of months pregnant, you know. Like, a lot of girls are pregnant. Anyway, this one girl came in. She was only a couple of months. And she was really huge. Maybe she's going to have twins or something. I don't know. And I remember the teacher saying, I don't know why unmarried juvenile delinquents have to be pregnant. Pregnant ones broke a law that says you're not allowed to have sexual intercourse until you are 16 years old. And then once they get pregnant and their mother sees, oh, you know, hell, Mary's getting a little gut on her, you know, then she can be charged. They were in court and they had to sit there in court. And I remember one girl telling me how embarrassed she was because the judge was a dirty old man. He asked for details. He was a dirty old man. He was sitting there leaning over his desk listening. She had to tell him everything she knew. That was her business, man. And these pregnant ones would ask, you know, well, I don't want to get pregnant again. Can I go on the pill? No, you can't have the pill. Can I have some sort of little hoop or something like that? No, you can't because you're not 16. I was 16, and I remember asking, you know, just to see what would happen. I remember I asked if I could go on the pill or something like that. And it says, no, because you're a ward of the government. You can't do that until you're 18. When they found out you were pregnant, you immediately had special attention from a social worker, from the children's aid or something like that. And these people would come around and tell you, oh, you're too young, you can't have a child. There's no way you can support it. give it up. Give it to a happy home. Some girls would do that willingly. Some girls wanted their babies. Most girls said, nobody's going to take my kid away from me. I want it. But they were forced to, you know. They were forced. There was one girl there. She was there for the whole time she had her baby. And she fought. She wanted her baby bad. Do you know what? She was on the table, you know. You know how she's telling everybody how she was on the table. And she was having her baby. And some people came along and says, will you please sign this? And she says, what is it? And they says, it's a thing to say that you did have your baby in our hospital. And here you are in labor and pain, you're dying and all this crap, you know. And she signed it. And she signed away her baby. And she didn't even know she did it. God, they screwed her really bad. Once you're there for 2 months or 3 months, you go to a review board. There they just cut you down. And then in the second review board, they say, you are good, you can go home, or you are bad, you have to come back for another review board in a month. That was recommended for graduation. That meant that things were starting to roll. You're going to be out of there soon. Like what they did was they typed up all these special papers and reports and mailed them to your aftercare, then downtown, then back to the school. They were mailed all over the place, all downtown and everything. And this took about a month and a half, and then you left. But every single girl in there that was pregnant had to go to 3 review boards because that took altogether about 8 or 9 months. And these girls were good. They didn't do anything wrong because they couldn't do anything wrong. They couldn't go up there and pick a fight with anyone because, you know, they might hurt the baby or something like that. The pregnant girls were the models, you know, the model girls. They were excellent in behavior and everything. But yet they were told they were bad. What they really wanted to do to them is make them have their babies while they were in the school still, so the school could take away their babies. The Indian girls, they lived way up north, like reserves, like White Dog and stuff like that. Places way the hell up there, you know. They never had any letters because their parents didn't know where their parents never charged these girls. It was always the white policeman who charged them for something like they smoked up once, they were with a guy. They got drunk once. They weren't home by a certain time. They were sent out for the stupidest little reasons. Christ, And some girls were sent out because they ran away from home, ran away from the reserve, and ran away to the white community to see what it was like to live in a white man's world, you know? They get sent out for running away. So automatically, what's that do? That turns them against some white people. They hated white people there, you know? Wow. Nobody talked to them. They never got phone calls or anything. And then when their month was up and they got an hour, nobody was there to take them out. And so they spent the whole day in there. Every Sunday, everybody's getting called for parlor. Once a month you got an hour that you were allowed to go outside, but it had to be with a relative over 21 years old. It was always white girls who got parlor. And these Indian girls, they came from so far up north, you know, from places nobody's ever heard of before, Moose Factory and all them places. And they never got any parlor or anything. And the staff wouldn't take them out because the staff, they were awfully prejudiced. They didn't want to be seen with an Indian girl. There was only one Indian girl that got to go out, and that was because she was very pretty girl. But the others, no. And even the white girls, it was only the pretty girls that the staff took out, you know. If she was pregnant, if you had pregnant, forget it. You couldn't go swimming, you couldn't go walking up the stairs, you couldn't go walking along the hall. They had wheelchairs for the pregnant girls, no. They couldn't do nothing, you know. And if you're an Indian, you might as well give up everything you have. Absolutely no chance in that place. Oh, it was just terrible. We had these 2 men, staff, who came from Bowmanville. And he was telling us how in the boys' training school they are allowed to smoke if they are 16. And the girls, you're not allowed to. And he was surprised that there was a fence around it. And we asked him why. He says, well, in the boys' training school, the doors are sometimes locked and there's no fence. He says, we go out there all the time and play football and kick around. He says, maybe the ball will go tripping into the street and the guy will go chasing it. He says, very few people leave off in there. They trust the boys more. They don't trust girls. The school doesn't. Because if they did, they wouldn't have the fence. They would treat us just like the guys, you know. I went to talk to my aftercare one day. That's like a parole officer, but she's inside, you know. She's supposed to guide you along when you're inside and stuff. And she asked me how I was there, and I told her while I ran away from home. And she says, well, don't you write to your parents? I says, no. And she says, but your father was here a few weeks ago. Like, my father came to visit me and I refused to see him, And I says, well, I wasn't interested in seeing him. She goes, why not? And I says, because I wasn't. And she goes, but can't you see that he loves you? And I just says, what? And she says, well, he sent you to a training school because he loves you. He wants the best for you. And I just sat there and I says, I beg you, I don't understand what the hell you're talking about, And she goes, he must love you because he's concerned. He came to visit you. And I says, he came to visit me because he's feeling guilty. And she goes, what has your father got to feel guilty about? You are the wrong one. She says, you should write an apologetic letter to your father. And I says, what? And she goes, you should. And I says, what for? And she says, because you're going to have to tell him, you're going to have to get it out of your heart, all this hate. She says, it's not right. She says, you should love your father because after all, he is your father. And I says, that's his excuse. And she goes, she says, you shouldn't be talking like that against your father, She's going on this. And she told me, well, I'm not going to do anything for you until you write this letter. And I says, what do you mean you're not going to do anything for me? She says, well, I'm not going to write any good reports on you. I'm not going to tell, review board anything good about you until you write a letter apologizing to your father. And I says, okay, fine, I won't get out of here. And she says, you're willing to spend until you're 18 until you're in here? And I says, yeah. But I wanted to escape because I figured, well, I'm going to be here for 2 years. But if I was still in there and I still had to write that letter, I think I'd have stayed in there until I was 18 because I would never write this letter. Because they want to degrade me, to humiliate me, to walk over me, But I didn't want to do that because there's no way I was going to apologize for nothing when I had nothing to apologize for.